Welcome to HTM on the Line, the podcast that is for HTM by HTM. I'm your host, Bryant Hawkins Sr. On today's podcast, we will talk with Dr. Jeff Smoot. Dr. Smoot is the BMed advisor at Mira Coastal College, located in Carlsbad, California. Dr. Smoot will share with us the great things that are happening at Mira Coastal College with regards to the Biomedical Equipment Technician Certificate Program. We will learn about the variety of students Dr. Smoot comes in touch with, the challenges the students face, and also the joy that Dr. Smoot gets from putting well-prepared HTM professionals into the working world. Without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Today's guest we have on HTM on the Line is Dr. Jeffrey Smoot. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Great. Before we get started, Jeff, how about you give us a background on you, yourself, how you came into this place where you're at today, your career?
Okay. Well, it's going to be a little while, but it'll be fun. I'm basically originally from Chicago. And when I was growing up, there was this old program on it. It's going to date myself, but it was called $6 Million Man, And I always thought I was intrigued with that. And I was interested in going into bionics and artificial limbs and internal organs and different things. So once I finished high school, way back in the day, 79 to be exact, I went to college and with the hopes of going into biomedical engineering. So started with a school down in Texas called Prairie View A&M. Went there for about a year and a half, but they didn't have that particular discipline. And so I wound up going to Texas A&M for about another year and a half, only to find out that type of engineering, usually at that time, they created this thing called the Jarvik 7, which was out of Utah. And those are like doctors, PhD, scientists. And so I was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to go through all that. And so I was looking kind of like for an alternative. So I left Texas A&M to kind of like just go back and just kind of regroup to kind of adjust and find out what I wanted to go into. And so I wound up eventually going into the Navy Reservist program. It was a corpsman program, which they had. It was called a RAMP at the time, which was called Reserve Administrative Medical Program. And the theory was back in the Navy back then was a program to basically train you civilian, which is go to college. They'll pay for you to go to college. And certain colleges had disciplines, and then they would pay for your schooling, you graduate, and then you would serve time in the actual Navy as a reservist. So in case of a war, and they had people who were basically working civilian jobs, they had different disciplines, biomed, x-ray tech, lab tech. And so at times of war, they could just activate you because you kind of like already had training because you've been working it civilian-wise. And so I got into that program, and I served 8 years in the Navy, and I got my associate's degree. It was at this school called South Suburban College, which was in Illinois, which is right around the corner from where my parents basically lived, where I lived. And so I went to finish that program, and so got a job in 1988 as a BMed Technician 1 in the Chicago area. And I worked at various hospitals in that area, kind of like just getting the basics. I worked at like BMed 2, and then in 1996, I decided to move down to Atlanta, Georgia, because I always wanted to live in Atlanta, and there was some things down there that really were attractive. And so I wanted to work for a hospital and moved down to Georgia State, worked at Grady Hospital for a few years. And then I was right around 99 when the big Y2K scare was going on in hospitals. And so I left Grady and traveled about a year doing Y2K testing, running, tests and different things on medical equipment, kind of see the dates if equipment was going to kind of like, fail if it went to year 2000. And then in the latter part of 1999, around December, I got hired at WellStar Health Systems there. And I was there for from 99 to about 2013. And I was a senior biomed there. I was went into PACS, and they started a cardiology PACS program. And at the time, I was going to school also for my bachelor's in IT. And it was a blessing in disguise because they were like, hey, look, we need you to go up there, there's some IT PACS stuff going on in cardiology. This is just the way they put it to me. IT PACS stuff going on in cardiology. And we want you to kind of see what the deal is, And I was like, well, I don't understand this. They said, well, you're the best we have because nobody here is in IT and you're all we have. And so it was a blessing in disguise because I basically, started the cardiac PACS program at Wellstar, which is around 2001, somewhere around there. And so I basically was in charge of like the image archiving, the merging of the reports and anything that went onto the network. Basically, I was managing and making sure it got there so physicians could basically see before they did, either CAFs or EP studies or whatever, all the information. And then I constantly was going back and forth because it was already cardiac PACS, I went over to medical imaging PACS, which is the X-ray, CT, MRI, and different things like that. And I was doing that. So I did that for about a good 10 years, basically, just doing the PACS. Then I started going to school. In the interim, I got my MBA, and I was working on my doctorate in 2011. And about 2013, I decided to kind of leave that to concentrate on finishing my doctoral program in computer science. And so around 2015, 2016 was when I came out here to California. I have a brother that lived out here. He asked me, he said, hey, you'd come out here maybe, because things kind of dried up in Atlanta and found myself kind of overqualified for some of the positions there. So I came out here, but I had a daughter that was in sophomore in high school back in Georgia, and I wanted to be closer to her. And so I basically accepted a job at Baptist Health in Kentucky as a business analyst. And we were doing everything pre-EMR. They had the Epic system. Their suite or their component for the Epic system of cardiology was called Cupid. And I basically managed everything that went pre-Cupid before it went to EMR. I basically would make sure all of anything cardiology had to come through the interface. And I had to make sure all of the images and measurements and diagnosis and reports kind of fed the EMR. So I was there until about 2018 in Kentucky. I had a taste of Southern Cal, so Kentucky was not my favorite place, because of that taste. And so once my daughter graduated in 2017, then I basically heard through the grapevine kind of that Maricosta College was starting a BMAT program, which is here in Carlsbad, California. And they needed an instructor. They didn't have anybody. So I applied, took the interview, and basically I was accepted. And July of 2018 was the first class at Maricosta College. And so that's how I got here. So now I'm an instructor at Maricosta College. I did that for a couple of years, kind of went off into major manufacturers, Medtronics. I was an instructor for ventilation, PB980s, 840s. And then that was not where my heart was. I loved teaching. I loved being in front of students, and seeing them grow, and there's no better feeling than that. And so that's where it got me to now.
Oh man, that's a great story you just told us here, man. You've bounced around to a few organizations here, I see. But yeah. I love the part you said where you enjoy being an instructor, and you mentioned at Maricosta College.
Yes.
So tell me about that program at Maricosta College.
Well, that was a program that basically was funded through the Department of Labor through Obama's America's Promise program, which is basically to get people to kind of retool them in careers. Maricosta College TCI basically has several different disciplines, from electronics, engineering, technology, to machinist made, to welding, to they just started craft brewing. Biomed was one that they created. And it was basically to get people in who wanted to change their career or, kind of like down in their luck or whatever. And through an 18-week program, then basically they would kind of like have the skills to be able to go out and to basically work. And so when I got there was absolutely nothing for Biomed. So I had to kind of like create it from scratch, And it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Let's focus on the BMed program itself. Now, how many kids usually do you have per semester?
The maximum it can hold is 16 students, and that hasn't too much changed. 16 students is the max that the program can have. And because that's kind of like what's kind of like that point to where it's the most effective for students, because I only have 18 weeks to train them. 18 weeks, and I get students in there. Some of them have never even touched a screwdriver, and I have to basically get them kind of personalize it for them, but not totally personalize it. But I'm always cognizant of each student, to kind of get to know them and kind of like understand their learning, and basically take them in. That 18 weeks transforms their life. It's a beautiful thing, I'm telling you.
Let me ask you this question: what is the age of the students? What's the age range from?
I had them from 18 to 70. Oh wow! Yeah, it's no age limit. There's no age limit to it. To get in the program, they have to pass they have to do an assessment of sophomore mathematics, some basic questions, and then English. That's really, and they have to be a high school graduate. So that's the only real requirements. Then they apply, they get interviewed. That's kind of like a different, somebody else do all that. And then it's work skills. So they not only just teach them biomed, but they teach them how to take interviews, how to write resumes. There's some OSHA certification, OSHA 10 that they receive also. Lean training. And so they really equip them for skills, not just biomed, but how to write resumes and different things like that.
How the students became familiar with this program?
Amazing, because a lot of them is like word of mouth. They'll have like, some students like, well, my mother was a nurse and she told me about the program, or my mother had a friend that was a nurse and they were talking, they said BMET, or one gentleman recently graduated, he was in the Navy and he was a corpsman in the Navy and he wanted to get into BMET, but Navy, they don't have spots really, it's hard to get over there. And so that's how he got out and he said, hey, I've always wanted to be a BMET, so I got in. And so a lot of them is word of mouth or somebody told them about it. There's not a whole lot of advertising. There's some, but a lot of times people just find out about it. Just like I guess a lot of people get in. I don't know if you want to call it stumble into the program or stumble into the career. It's just like a lot of people. So it's really amazing.
Okay, since you mentioned such a variety with your students, what is your teaching style or philosophy? Since you have so many different backgrounds, what type of teaching style do you use to reach the kids?
The main focus I have, and I always keep this in front of everything, is that basically I'm training the students to be entry-level BMET ones. Okay. So my thing is that the first 8 weeks, I'm giving them foundation, basic electronics, anatomy and physiology, intro to medical equipment, just introduction. I mentioned electrical safety, and I talk about testing because that's one of the main things, testing, calibration. And I emphasize a whole lot. I'm going to say it again, electrical safety. So I basically give them foundation the first 8 weeks. I have the program broken down into 4 phases where I'm teaching them anatomy and physiology, IT fundamentals, healthcare IT, some informatics. And then I start going into anatomy and physiology as it's applied, which means that, when I'm talking about EKG, I talk about the chest, I talk about the heart. I don't go down to the bones in the foot. I don't go to that level because I don't have that much time. And so I'm basically giving them anatomy and physiology that's applicable for entry-level biomed technician, And so, give them terms and terminologies, talk about the origin of signals, biopotentials. I put that in there. So not only do they know how to test the equipment, but they kind of understand the origin of where the signals are coming from. And then the second part of the program, which is the last 8 weeks, is a lot of hands-on. They do electrical safety. I have a variety of equipment. They do electrical safety. I put bugs in it to where they have to try and troubleshoot it. I take the EKG leads, and it might be a 10-lead EKG. I take all of the connectors off, the label, left arm, left leg, right leg. I take them all off, mix them up. I have some generic ones that just a regular color, and they have to basically trace which one's the left leg, which one's the right leg. They have to basically trace it. So just in case they get, in the field, if they got an EKG machine that has no markings on it, they'll know how to find out which one's the left leg, right leg, left leg, and left arm, things like that. So I basically give them more hands-on for the last 8 weeks. They do a lot of testing. They do a lot of troubleshooting. I give them that. I have scenarios which I've created, which I've been, I have tons of scenarios. You're sitting in the shop. You're the first one in there. You get a phone call from the surgery. You just started as a BMed. What do? They need you now. So I take them through scenarios and we talk about what do you do? Because you get some that want to go in there and change the world. And haven't been trained on anesthesia. You better not touch it. So, but you go get information, tell them the guy's going to come in, no matter what the doctor and nurse says, you have not been trained on it, and so I give them a lot of scenarios in that case where they really have some idea of what they're going to experience. Because as anybody knows, has been listening, it was a biomed, things are not always like you planned, okay?
What are some challenges you think, in your opinion, students face?
And that's a great question, because one of the biggest challenges is, within the first month or so, I try to get a site visit in the biomed shop, okay? So them to actually see what a biomed shop looks like. The ideal one would be a tour of the hospital. COVID had kind of stopped it in the beginning. We had tours and things so they can go and see what ICU and see what ER looks like and different things like that. And so the thing is that when they go into the biomed shop, it never fails. The expression on their face when they feel like they got to know all that equipment when they start, okay? They go in there like, oh my God, all this equipment. I don't know if I can learn all this. It's like, wait a minute. Yep. This is not the first day, okay? These are seasoned people in here, okay? This is not what you're going to be working on the first day. So this is kind of relaxed, And so after that, it's all a matter of, I have to reinforce that you're going to only be working on certain things when you first go in as a BMed 1, okay? And I have to emphasize that and keep that going, because they come back now and they're thinking like, oh man, I got to really understand a lot of this stuff, And so it helps out on both sides, because on one side, they realize they got to really get serious of what they got to know. And on the other side, it's like, some of them are like, oh man, they kind of crawl in the shell, and I got to bring them out. And the way I do that is basically I just get them to start doing a lot of hands-on things, Send a BKG. What are you looking at? Understand the alarms. What do they mean? Different things like that. And then they start building their confidence. And every one of them comes back at the end and say, Dr. Smoot, thank you so much, because I didn't think I could do this, but now I feel like I can. So it's very gratifying. Very.
How do you motivate that one student who, like you mentioned, they get overwhelmed by what they see? How do you go about motivating them? Because you may have one that feel the anatomy part could be overwhelming. So what type of motivation tips you use with your students to keep them motivated?
Well, what I do is I see, and this is the thing as an instructor, I feel like that as a good instructor, or one is efficient in what they're doing, they need to kind of understand each one of their students. You can't understand the total life of them and everything, but you can kind of feel when one is really picking up on things and when one is not, okay? One of the things I do, one of the first things I do when the first day of class, we have a class starting August 1st. The first day of class, I give them the final test, okay? Some people say, final test, why you do that? Because I want them to know that they don't know they don't know this. You get some in there, you got all different types of backgrounds, auto mechanics, worked in the electronic shop for years, but they don't know biomed, okay? And so I basically take them, I give them the test the first day, okay, to let them know that they really don't know, okay? And so then, that way, any type of person is going to act up maybe later on and want to show me out or want to just be, want to run the class, then they could always reflect on that test that they took, where they got 3 points. 1 point was for the name, 1 point was for the date. So here I do things like that. But what I do is that I have to take, I had a young lady in the class, and she had a family. Her son was in college and different things, and she was like, I don't know if I could do this, Dr. Smoot. I was like, no, you can do it. You can do it. Just take your time. Don't get overwhelmed, because you're in here to learn, okay? There's no dumb questions, okay? And the only dumb question is when you don't ask it, okay? And so you need to take your time. You can do this. And she finished the program, and, she's working as a BMed now, one of the major hospitals. So, taking that type of person that was really feeling like, oh, kids in college and she this and that, she'd come in with problems. And I said, look, you can do this. You just take your time. You only got 18 weeks to do this. Okay. You can do this. Okay. And I just stay with him. I don't try to discourage him. I don't try to discourage him, and I don't because my theory is that they understand more than they could take a test. Okay. I was not one of the best students in college at all, but if they can understand and grasp the knowledge that they're having, the test is nothing. I mean, there's something, but, it's basically to give them a barometer as far as where they're at. And so I try to kind of not tailor make it for them, but I try to always be cognizant of, that you have people in here that don't even know what a screwdriver is. They never touched it, And now I got to make them comfortable with being able to do this in 18 weeks, And so I got to find ways to work around to get them motivated. But when they start getting to the part where they're hands-on a lot, then they start to build the confidence, because one of the things at the end of the program, I have them do a practical, which means I have a defib set up, all the stuff stripped out. They got to set it up. I have parameters on the board where they got to set up the current for pacing. They have to fire the defib at maybe 20, 50, 100, 250. I have a EKG machine where they got to set up all the leads, put it on the patient simulator, run a bigemity, run a, normal sinus rhythm. So they have to do all this. This is their practical, okay? And, EKG machine, I get a, Mac 5000, take everything, take the acquisition box, flip up the panel, take out the cable from under it. They have to put all that together. And that's why I can really see what they've done and what they've learned, And I'm standing there looking at them too.
That's great, man.
So they have hands-on and see when they have that, then they're able to, they really are getting confidence in themselves as they're doing it. They've been doing this all during the last half of the program. So if they can't do it, it's your fault. You've had all the chances to ask me questions, to work with other students, to do all this, and now you get there and you can't do it. That's your fault because you've had plenty of opportunities to do it. So a lot of them, I haven't had any of them failed either. They've all done well,
And so this 18-week program you have, is that they get a certificate or what type of?
Yes, they get a certificate from Maricosta. It says they completed BMET, and it's roughly 440 hours, which is around the same hours as you would as an associate's degree, but we don't have the history and political science and business things they have to take. They're just straight biomed, Monday through Wednesday, 8 to 4:30, 18 weeks. That's what I do.
Okay, great. So let me ask you this question. What is your graduation rate or completion of the program rate? If you had to
100%.
put a percentage, yes. 100%?
Yep.
Wow, that's awesome. What about job placement?
Job placement, 100%.
Really?
Yeah. Well, let me. Okay. The ones that want to get a job are working. Or internship, because we have an internship program that we started that Maricosta basically pays the employer for having the intern there. Okay. And the employer's turn have to give them job training and everything. And they basically pay the actual student. Students getting paid to do the internship program. So either they're in the internship program or they have a job. This last cohort, which was 10 people that graduated, okay, 2 of them were because of medical. That's why they weren't working. One was working, but then he had to, because of medical problem he had to stop. The other one was basically, he lives, San Diego's right at the border of Tijuana. So he lived in Tijuana and he was already working in biomed in lab, but he wanted to get another job. So he wanted to go into dialysis. I don't know whether he got a job, but he was already kind of working biomed, he said. And so, but all the other ones, internships, a job. I got one gentleman went to Phoenix, Arizona. He just started his biomed career today, actually. And then the rest of them are kind of sprinkled within, San Diego, at Scripps, at UCSD, University of California, San Diego Hospital, at Scripps, and the different hospitals in the area. So it's good.
With the time we're living in today, there are a lot of biomed jobs out there. Are there any companies, vendors reaching out to you for your students?
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of sad because I don't have enough students. They call me, hey, send us a couple. All I'm working, I like to, but and so it's always a list. I believe that when you put out a good product, in this case, I'm not just students a product, but when you can put out good information, put good students out there, then people will come. And so I've been blessed with this program that they've graduated, and some have worked in Neon Coding, some worked at GE. I have a gentleman in Medtronic. I have people in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It works at all the different hospitals. They've all reached out to me, and they're really it takes a village, and I'm telling you, Brian, it takes a village, and man, it's I can't say enough about the biomed community, their support. We got tours, and you know what? Let me tell you something. This is the only program, and I can say this in the country, that has visits, and is going to visit the United States Naval Hospital Mercy Ship. In San Diego. So a lot of them say that, but I can say it. Okay.
Well, Jeff,
when they come back, we're going on it. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, but Jeff, I really want to commend you for what you're doing, man, because obviously you probably can go out there into the corporate world and make a lot more money, but it's great that you're giving back to the fields, because we definitely need technicians. And I follow you on LinkedIn, and every kid that graduates, I send them a friend invite, and I congratulate them personally, because they need that support, and you're definitely giving it to them, and I commend you for that. Now, let me ask you this question. Where do you see your program advancing to? Or is it at the plateau, or you see places where you mentioned things you're doing now, but do you have any ideas you plan on doing to even make it a more stronger program when the kids come through?
Yeah, I've implemented a couple of things. I'm adding some things, and with this curriculum, I'm adding some sensor technology, because I feel like the sensors are going to be the way, going to do a lot of things, and sensor technology, artificial intelligence in healthcare is something really something I really love doing on the side, and different things. I've completed a program in MIT in artificial intelligence in healthcare, and so I'm looking to implement that this cohort coming up, which is cohort number 9, and I'm going to implement that so they can, get kind of like understanding. I try to always look at trending, as far as the different things that are on the horizon for BMETs, and I try to look at the trending and kind of implement those in the program so the students can kind of be aware of it, and at least be able to speak the language. Okay, and that's the way I look at it. You might not be able to understand everything, but it sure helps when you call IT to say, hey, can I get an IP address, as opposed to I need the numbers, whatever you put into the So I want them to at least be able to speak the language, and that's one of the things with the IT portion of it. I trying to educate the students on.
Now, I know you have an 18-week program, so you can't fit everything in, but if I can give you a tip, RFID systems, that's becoming real popular.
Yeah, that's another one, RFID.
With tracking temperatures and tracking assets. I know a lot of that's becoming popular now too. So
going with those sensors,
Absolutely.
Oh, and also, just to kind of segue on what I was saying, I'm in the process of working on something globally to where I'm going to be able to go over to, in my off time between cohorts, be able to go over to Africa and to be able to train biomeds over there. Look forward to that program. I'm working in its infancy, but December might be the time when I go over there. And the problem is they have equipment, but they haven't been educated on BMET, or have somebody to really train them on BMET. And so, of course, it'll be a condensed program, and that's one thing the challenge I have is to basically kind of give them the meat of what they're going to need, and triage and teach them some things. And so I'm really excited about that, because it's going to be an ongoing thing. So,
oh man, that's great. When you get over there now, we ought to have you back on HTM on the line. You could share some experiences with me, with us. Yeah, that'd be great.
Definitely.
Now, let me ask you this. We're getting close to the end here. Can you share some knowledge with HTM instructors that may be listening in? Some kind of tips you can give them? Some advice?
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed about some of the programs is they always got to stay into the mindset that you're teaching BMET 1s, okay? Now, if your college is going to bring teaching BMET 2s and 3s, great. But I'm addressing just entry-level biomeds. It's important that they're cognizant of what their goals are. Because when you get into a facility, of course, you grow. You learn more. You met too. You send to schools, different things. But the basics is what I always try and stay with. I see programmers teaching cybersecurity, teaching a lot of this advanced MRI repair. And as a BMed 1, I haven't ran across it. Now, maybe there's some places out there, but they let a BMed 1 work on cybersecurity, or they let a BMed 1 work on the MRI. Because usually that's IT, and IT is very territorial. And I always tell people, especially BMEDs, if you understand your role with IT and stay within those boundaries, your responsibilities will increase. But if you go outside your boundaries, okay, in IT, then they will decrease, because they'll look at you as somebody that might go in and hack something or mess up something. So I always tell people, hey, because it was interesting when I got my bachelor's in IT degree, I used to go and, I work with IT all the time. I was, hey, I got it. What would you? And they would be like, hey, man, you don't have an A+. I said, well, I got a bachelor's. I said, yeah, but we don't know if you know what a peripheral is. We don't know if you know what some of the terms that the A+ would know. I said, wow, that's interesting. I never thought about that, So, but I built a relationship with IT to the point where, because I understood my boundaries, to where I had keys to the closet. I get calls from the network admin, hey, man, can you go take a look at this switch on the 3rd floor? Because he's over in another part of the campus. Take a look at it and call me back and tell me what you see. So it was a hand-in-hand thing, that one hand washed the other, because they could trust me. But yet and still, when the network was down and something was going on, I could call them directly and say, hey, what's going on? And so, but because I understood my boundaries, they increased, And so I tell anybody, especially a lot of these programs, that, I teach the basic fundamentals of IT and healthcare IT, to understand that part there, and just to understand the language will get them a lot farther, because now when you talk to IT knows, okay, well, this person knows what they're talking about. They said IP address. Oh, they talked about a VLAN. Okay, I know what they're talking about. So now they start to look for you whenever they need something, And so, just stay within the boundaries. And remember, BMed 1 is what they're graduating for. BMed 1.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we do with IT, with biomed. I tell the BMEDs, if it's on the equipment, it's biomed. If it's not on the equipment, it's IT.
Yeah, and a lot of them say, from the wall back, beyond the wall is IT. Anything from the wall coming at you is basically biomed. But see, IT's not going to come and put an IP address.
Nope, they're not. Yeah.
So you need to understand that. Okay?
Absolutely.
They'll send you one through email, but they're not going to come put it in your piece of, you got 10 EKG machines. They're not going to come put in the IP address. Okay? So you have to understand some IT there to be able to at least function and speak the language, So.
Well, Jeff, I'm glad we got together, man. I appreciate you coming on. You gave us a lot of information in a short period of time. And like I said, I commend you for giving back to the HTM community, because you are definitely needed now more than ever, because there's a staffing issue that I don't know if we're going to be able to fill it.
Yeah.
But we're going to do our best to. And
yeah, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to do as much as I can.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate finally getting on here, because I've been wanting to get on this for a while. So I really appreciate it. You keep doing what you're doing, because you're basically promoting, pushing, and you're reaching people that I can't reach. And man, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, sir. Thank you for coming on, Jeff.
Thank you.
Once again, I'd like to thank Dr. Jeff Smoot for being a guest on HTM on the Line. Dr. Jeff and MiraCosta College are doing special things to help the HTM community. And the 8-week program Dr. Smoot will be teaching abroad in Africa is also very monumental. Dr. Jeff Smoot, I applaud your efforts and contributions you are making for the HTM industry. I like to always leave you with a quote. A good teacher is like a candle. It consumes itself to light the way for others. Be safe out there.